country where the Christ was born. This is the land of peace. So hopefully peace will come to this area and we could celebrate like any others and bring the happiness to our kids.
An estimated 40,000 Palestinian Christians living in the occupied West Bank endure the ongoing Israeli brutality under Tel Aviv's occupation of the Palestinian territories, where they continue to face restrictions to their freedom of worship and movement. Every year during the celebrations of Easter, it's very important for Palestinian Christians to pray at the Holy Sepulchre Church in occupied Jerusalem, Al-Quds, to mark the holy occasion. But since the holy city has been out of bounds for Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip since 1967, the only means to reach this city for Palestinians, whether Muslims or Christians, is through special permits issued by Israeli authorities. This year, Israel has only issued hundreds of permits, and some of those who received permits didn't make it to Jerusalem to attend festivities since the rest of their family members were not granted them.
I'm the only one in the family who received a permit this Easter season. I'd love to go to all the churches in Jerusalem and in Haifa, but I can't go alone. The Israelis tried to humiliate us, even at checkpoints. We don't want their permits. We want to live in peace and to get our freedom of worship.
As Palestinians, as Christians living in Palestine under occupation, literally saying our cities and villages became ghettos. Having access to the holy city or to churches there, especially at this time of year, is our normal right as Palestinians. But we are not allowed to have this right.
Israel claims that the system of permits and checkpoints, including the separation barrier, are needed for security reasons. We spoke to Catholic parish priest Ibrahim Shomali, asking him whether Christians feel they are abandoned by their leaders around the world. He insisted that Israel has never listened to the message of peace delivered by Christian leaders, including the Pope. He says that the land is Palestinian and all Palestinians will stand together defending it.
Our suffering is one, Muslims or Christians. The Israeli bullets don't differentiate between us, so neither do the checkpoints nor the whole Israeli occupation. Here we all suffer. Pope Francis came here and stood in front of the separation wall, and it was a very significant way to demonstrate his participation in our suffering. He always speaks about the illegality of the wall and how Israel grabs Christian land to build the wall.
Welcome to the Palestinian Corner from Montreal, and this is our 52nd weekly episode devoted to the Palestinian Christians. The Palestinian Christians are Christians of historic Palestine, including Palestinian refugees and residents of the Palestine Authority, Israel, and of the Palestinian Christians, immigrants, and ancestry anywhere in the world. Their region consists mainly of historic Palestine, where Jesus walked. Called the Holy Land by Christians, their holy cities include Bethlehem, Nazareth, and Jerusalem. There are an estimated 500,000 people worldwide as of the year 2000. Palestinian Christians belong to one of a number of Christian denominations, including the Eastern Orthodox, Oriental Orthodox, Catholics, Eastern and Western Rites, Anglicans, Lutheranians, other branches of the Protestants and others. They number 6 to 7% of the 12 million Palestinians. 70% live outside of Palestine and Israel. A person is called Nasrani, the Arabic word of Nazarene, or Masihi, a derivative of Arabic word Masih, meaning the Messiah. As of 2015, Palestinian Christians comprise approximately 1 to 2% of the population of the West Bank and less than 1% in the Gaza Strip. A large number of Palestinian Christians fled or were expelled from the Jewish-controlled areas of Mandate Palestine during the 1948 Israeli-Arab War, and a small number left during the 1967 Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. There are also many Palestinian Christians who are descendants of Palestinian refugees from the post-48 era who fled to Christian majority countries, primarily in Arab countries surrounding historic Palestine and in diaspora, particularly Latin America, Europe, and North America. The census of 1922 recorded over 200 localities, majorities. In 2009, there were an estimated 50,000 Christians in the Palestinian territories, mostly in the West Bank, with about 3,000 in the Gaza Strip. In Israel, 154,000, about 80% are designated as Arabs. The first Christian communities in Roman Palestine were Aramaic speaking. By the 7th century, Jerusalem and Byzantium Palestine became the center of Greek culture in the Orient. Soon after the Muslim conquest, the Palestinians, including the Christians, began speaking Arabic. Most Palestinian Christians nowadays are themselves as culturally and linguistically Arabic Christians with ancestors dating back to the first followers of Christ. They claim descent from the Phoenicians and Canaanites, Gassanids, Arab, Romans, Byzantium. Palestinian Arab Christians assumed a political attention in the 19th century as European and American interests grew and foreign institutions were developed in their communities. The urban elite began to undertake constructions in Palestine of multi-religion Arab civil society. When the British received from the League of Nations a mandate to administer Palestine, the British authorities in the mandate Palestine had difficulty to understand the commitment of the Palestinian Christians to Palestinian nationalism. Christians, Palestinians were simply Palestinians, and they shared, if not led, the aspirations of their people for independence from foreign occupiers, whether they were Turks, English, or new Zionist immigrants. Religion aside, they were cultured in Christianity and its history. As well, they emerged in the history of the Palestinian people. The Nakba in 1948 left the multi-denominational Christian Arab communities in disarray. Their immediate task was to assist the thousands of homeless Palestinian refugees regardless of their religion. There was a differential Zionist policy of expulsion of Palestinians of their homes, lands, and communities. More leniency was applied to the Christians of the Galilee, where expulsions mostly affected Muslims. Christians were allowed to remain in their homes while Muslims were driven out toward Lebanon and Syria. Zionists were charged that Muslims were Arabs and came from the desert to settle in Palestine, where God had assigned them Palestine, and kicked the Palestinians out of their home. Always religion, neglecting the fact that religion has nothing to do with occupations and expulsion of native people of their land. Whatever the religions they believe to carry, Jews were kicked out of Palestine according to the Torah. We apply that to the Palestinians, the native people, before the Torah and before Abraham. We always neglect that the Palestinians, they were Phoenicians, Canaanites, the people who had the first civilization on earth. Unfortunately, everybody from the Romans, Greeks, everybody neglecting their history. And they want their land. Occupiers and settlers, always the case. They neglect the fact that religion has nothing to do with occupations and expulsion of native people of their land. Whatever religions beliefs they carry, they were charged with their knowledge of biblical history, regardless of the history of the Palestinian people, who included not only Muslims, but Christians and Jews as well. After the war of 1948, the Christian populations in the West Bank under Jordanian control dropped largely due to the expulsions as refugees and the deteriorating economic conditions. These trends accelerated after the 1967 war in the aftermath of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. Today, about 3/4 of Bethlehem Christians live abroad, and more Jerusalem Christians live in Sydney, Australia, than in Jerusalem. Despite all these difficulties, Christian Arabs gave attention to educate their children, not only in the West Bank and Gaza and refugee camps in Lebanon and Jordan and Syria, but in Israel itself. They are one of the most educated groups in Israel. Statistically, Christians, Arab in Israel have the highest rate of educational attainment among all religion community. According to the data by Israeli Central Bureau of Statistics in 2010, a growing number of Christian Palestinians have been recruited to the Israeli military since 2013. The number of Christians recruited into the ranks of the occupation army and the National Civil Service is about 650 men and women, and growing according to statistics conducted by Dr. Yusri El-Khazaram. This number is of alarm bells for all those involved in and are active within the 1948 group. Some Christians were part of the affluent segments of Palestinian society before they were forced out during the 1948 Arab-Israeli War. In West Jerusalem, over 50% of Christian Palestinians lost their homes to the Israelis, according to historian Sami Haddawi, but soon they recovered their pride and snapped back to life and prominence. Within the Palestinian Authority, the Christians achieved very prominent positions, whether in the Palestinian territories, Israel or Jordan, Syria or Lebanon. Many Palestinian Christians have been immigrating to countries in Latin America, Argentina and Chile, as well as to Australia, the United States and Canada.
إنما يميز مدينة القدس عاصمتنا الروحية والوطنية أنك ترى فيها الكنائس والمساجد، أنك فيها تسمع أجراسا تدق ومآذن تنادي بأن الله أكبر، ويطلبون منه العون والقوة والتعزية لهذا الشعب المحاصر المظلوم الذي يتوق إلى يوم الحرية والاستقلال والكرامة. ولذلك اسمحوا لي أولا وقبل كل شيء أن نؤكد عندما نتحدث عن قضايانا الوطنية، عندما نتحدث عن حق العودة، نحن طائفة واحدة اسمها الشعب العربي الفلسطيني.